Hi, and welcome back to Gifts of Intuition, where mental health meets the divine feminine. I'm Melissa, and I'm so glad that you're with me today. If you're new, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome back. Let's get going. So, today we're going to be talking about a topic that probably many of us have wondered or questioned about ourselves at different times, especially in times of anxiety. So let me adjust my camera here. Okay. So what we're going to be looking at is intrusive thoughts today. I want to talk about why they feel so real sometimes and how to know if they are women's intuition, mother's intuition, or anxiety. It's really hard to know sometimes. And depending on what you figure out it is going to determine how you respond to it. So it's a really important thing to be able to figure out within yourself. So let's take a look at it. So have you ever had a thought so vivid that it was so emotionally intense that it felt really just too hard to ignore? Maybe you suddenly thought that something bad might happen to your child, or what if my relationship is secretly failing? Or what if what I'm sensing is danger? What if this isn't anxiety, but instead my intuition? And the more you try to figure that out, the more real it might feel. So we're talking about one of the most confusing emotional experiences many women have. So how do you tell the difference between intuition, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, or hypervigilance? Because when you're a woman, especially a woman who has survived trauma, entered motherhood, had chronic stress, experienced betrayal, gaslighting, or just emotional overload, your nervous system can become so activated that the fear starts disguising itself as insight. And sometimes anxiety can sound very real, even on a deep spiritual level. So today we're going to explore why intrusive thoughts feel so real sometimes, how trauma changes your perception, the difference between intuition and fear, why mothers especially struggle with this, the psychology behind intrusive thoughts, and how to reconnect with your true inner knowing without spiraling into panic. All right, so let's get into this. So first off, what are intrusive thoughts? Well, they are unwanted, distressing thoughts, images, urges, or sensations that enter your mind automatically, and everyone gets them. They're not a sign that something is wrong or wrong with you. The part that makes them so unbearable is the meaning and importance that we attach to them. And so here's something incredibly important. Having an intrusive thought does not mean that you want to have it or that you want the thing to happen that you believe it or want to believe it, or that it's going to happen. It's not necessarily a prediction or a premonition of anything. In fact, intrusive thoughts usually attack the things we care about most. It goes straight to the value system. So think about it. Your kids, your spouse or partner, your family, your job, finances, whatever, like the things that matter the most to you in your life are the things that become primary targets. And your sense of morals, your moral compass. That's a big one. So that's why parents will often experience terrifying intrusive thoughts about their kids, or why loving partners will have intrusive thoughts about their relationship or the quality of their relationship, and why deeply moral people will question if maybe secretly deep down they are actually a bad person. The brain latches on to what matters most, because if you don't really care about it, it's like this weird morbid thought that pops into your head and you're like, that's weird, and you move on. We get those all the time too. We just don't notice them as much. Again, we all get intrusive thoughts. I just want to reiterate that. Everyone gets intrusive thoughts. Not everyone gets attached to them in the same way. So the more emotionally significant something is, the more sticky these thoughts become. And so for women, especially mothers, intrusive thoughts often attach to the concepts of safety, protection, responsibility, caregiving, relationships, and emotional survival. This is because women are often socially conditioned to anticipate danger before it happens. Just kind of going back to something I've talked about in previous videos, it is often put back on us as women to protect ourselves rather than being put on, say, men for not harming us in the first place. There really is a social norm that we should be looking out for anyone as well as ourselves at all times, because we are first and foremost responsible. Not saying that's how it should be, but often that is the case. So why then? Why? Why do they feel so real? Well, here's the key. Your brain doesn't measure danger by logic. It measures danger by emotional response and nervous system activation. So again, when I said, if you have an intrusive thought about something you don't really care about, like this pen, if I have an intrusive thought about this pen, like it's gonna break or get lost, or I don't really care. So therefore I have a thought maybe, and I'm like, well, that's weird. Why am I even thinking about this pen? And I move on. But when it's something I care about and it comes into my mind as either an image or a thought, like my kid or my family or something, then it's like, I must do something. And that reaction just fuels the fire. So again, danger is measured in our reaction to it. So when a thought creates that strong emotional reaction, your brain goes, this feels important. Pay attention. Do something. And so the body reacts physiologically with maybe a racing heart, or that stomach dropping feeling, or adrenaline surging through your body, or hyper focusing on the situation at hand. And suddenly this thought or this image that has just popped into your head, maybe out of nowhere, just feels really meaningful and important. But emotional intensity isn't proof of anything. Again, let me say that again. Emotional intensity is not evidence that there's a problem here. So anxiety creates urgency, whereas your intuition creates clarity. Anxiety screams. Intuition whispers. And because of that, it requires a sense of groundedness, calm, patience to hear it. Anxiety triggers the spiral, whereas intuition grounds us. Anxiety demands certainty. I must know the outcome. I must know if that's going to happen. I must know whatever. Intuition allows us to trust in ourselves to be able to handle whatever comes, trust in the process, just trust. Again, on that certainty note, anxiety really wants certainty, and I want to make sure that I bring this point home. Nothing is certain, not really. Even things that are highly predictable are not certain. Death is certain, as they say, death and taxes, right? But even with that, we don't necessarily know how we'll die or how much we'll get on our tax return. You know what I mean? As much as we try to feel comfortable in our world by making things certain, they're really not. That is an illusion. And the more we can just kind of sit in the present moment rather than trying to jump into the future, the more we can appreciate the moment and accept that we don't know what comes next. Not really. We still take proper precautions and safety measures and whatever, like wear your seatbelt in the car. Don't go, well, I don't know if I'm going to get in an accident or not, so let's just throw caution to the wind. It's not that kind of thing, but it's like you still put the seatbelt on just in case. That's a normal precaution. I'm talking excessive measures here. Be present, ground yourself, listen, connect. Don't jump to this hurried call to action, because that's usually anxiety talking. And so this is where many women get confused, because especially if you're an empathic spiritual woman who does tend to pick up on energy, your energy, other people's energy, you may be picking up on the anxiety of a situation or your anxiety. And so it might start to feel like intuition because it feels off, or it feels like something is warning you of something. I really want to just bring you back into your embodiment, your center space, and really check in with yourself. Because anxiety and intuition are not the same thing, though it can be confusing as to which one's which sometimes. So because women are often taught to distrust logic and also to put trust in others and what others say and do over our own intuition and fears, there's such a disconnect in being able to trust our own intuition. And so we don't know necessarily what's the safe way to go. Who do I trust? What do I trust? And we've talked about this before, especially with trauma, where we lose touch or we lose connection with that part of ourselves that lets us know we're safe or not safe. It all sort of blends together. And so here we are again, learning how to trust our own intuition again and know when it is in fact our intuition. So let's talk more about trauma. So many people, and again, I'm specifically addressing women here, so many women grew up needing to scan environments for emotional danger. And I want to say that in times of danger, in unsafe environments and situations, your anxiety and your fear are not leading you astray. They may actually be protecting you. But what happens is later in life or in a later situation, when you are in fact safe, your body is still reacting that way. And you are in that fight or flight, as we've talked about before, where you don't necessarily know, am I in fact safe? I know logically I am. I know logically none of that is happening right now, but my nervous system sure as heck does not know that for sure. So what can cause that is growing up with maybe unpredictable parents, emotional neglect, criticism, excessive criticism, manipulation, unsafe relationships, instability, betrayal, or environments where you had to become emotionally hyper aware to survive. Often that's like situations where maybe a parent is an addict or has a rage problem, something where it's literally not safe if you are not sure of what the emotional temperature of the room is. And so in that, your nervous system has learned, if I can predict danger, then maybe I can be safe. The problem is it's constantly trying to predict danger. Especially when you feel safe, it's like, oh my God, the bottom's going to drop out at any time. Just looking for that shoe to drop situation. So that hypervigilance can later feel like intuition, but it's not. And to be fair, some women do pick up on subtle emotional cues very accurately. And women do tend to be very deeply perceptive. But again, it's important to be present and watch out for, is it a frantic energy or is it a calm, grounded energy? Hypervigilance and intuition are not the same thing. And so we need to really look at the difference there. So hypervigilance is a fear-based scanning, like looking for the problem. Intuition is more of an embodied knowing. And that takes practice to really check in and be present within yourself and listen to your body. Hypervigilance is frantic. It feels very frantic, whereas intuition feels very anchored, connected, grounded. Hypervigilance searches obsessively for certainty. And again, it's not really going to find it, which then heightens the anxiety. Intuition doesn't need compulsive checking and reassurance. And this becomes especially intense, or it can become especially intense in motherhood, because motherhood biologically heightens our awareness. Your nervous system becomes deeply attuned to protecting your child. So when intrusive thoughts appear, many mothers think, what if this is my mother's intuition? But anxiety often disguises itself as responsibility, especially for loving mothers. Again, it attacks what you care the most about. So, and I want to say too, it also says to you, if something is possible, it's probable. So like, yeah, this outcome could happen. This crazy fluke of a thing could happen. Not going to say it can't, but it doesn't mean that it will. Doesn't mean that it won't, but it doesn't mean that it will. And your anxiety is looking for that certainty of like, I need to know if it'll happen. I need to know if it won't happen. I need to know if I'm safe to be calm or if I need to start getting a plan of action prepared. Yeah, it's exhausting. So let's take a look now at where the divine feminine comes in. So, from the perspective of the divine feminine, many women become disconnected from their true inner knowing because they've spent years perhaps surviving instead of feeling safe enough to listen inwardly. A dysregulated nervous system can distort your intuition. When we are chronically anxious, burned out, traumatized, or emotionally unsafe, fear becomes louder than our wisdom. A modern culture often romanticizes hypervigilance in women. So what that looks like is always anticipating, always sacrificing, always monitoring, always emotionally carrying everyone else. But the divine feminine is not panic. The divine feminine is presence, embodiment, discernment, connection, inner trust. True intuition usually arises from a quieter place. Not obsession, not compulsion, and not catastrophic spiraling. And this matters because many women accidentally reinforce anxiety by treating every intrusive thought as a spiritual message. Sometimes a thought is not a sign. Sometimes it's just anxiety looking for certainty. And that's because that is often how we are programmed to walk through this life. We need to deprogram and reprogram in many cases. So how do we tell the difference? So how do we begin separating intuition from anxiety? Well, reflective thoughts like looking at how our anxiety shows up, okay? So anxiety usually repeats constantly. Again, that sticky thought concept, right? It's just kind of like stuck. I'm ruminating. I'm going over and over. It just keeps coming back. It escalates urgency. Now, I got to get to this. I got to figure this out now. I've got to get to the bottom of this. It demands immediate action. I must deal with this. I must prevent this. I must fix it. It seeks reassurance. Reassurance from others, reassurance from ourselves, reassurance from the internet, ChatGPT or Reddit, whatever it is. Just, I need to know, is this possible? Am I alone? Do other people have this? It creates compulsive checking. Did it happen now? Is it happening yet? It feels catastrophic. So not just like bad, but like earth-shattering, life-changing, life-ending, bad, catastrophic outcomes. And it gets louder the more attention you give it. It seems counterintuitive. I'm thinking if I focus on it and I get to the bottom of it and I fix it and I whatever, I'm going to make it better. No, you are feeding it and making it worse. It seems counterintuitive, I know, but that's not how it works. Intuition is different. It feels calmer. It arrives more quietly, and so we need to be quiet and listen. It does not require obsession. It doesn't do that endless spiral thing. And often it feels emotionally clean and clear, if that makes sense. It doesn't have strings attached and it doesn't feel sticky. It's just clear. Anxiety says something terrible is going to happen unless you figure this out right now. Intuition says, pay attention. It's a very different energy. Another important clue, anxiety pulls you away from the present moment. Intuition brings you deeper into the present. So what that looks like is, in this moment, I am worried about this thing happening. It may even go into the past. So you're in the future, but in the past, see, this happened before. This happened to me, or I heard about it happening to somebody else, or I read about, or whatever. This has happened in the past, and so therefore, I am worried about it happening in the future. It could happen because it has happened, and you're doing this dance between the past and the future, and you are not in the present moment. And so the present moment looks like, in this moment, right here, right now, is this future thing happening? Is this thing from the past that you experienced or heard about, is it happening right now? No. Could it happen? Maybe. I don't know. But it's not happening right now. And that's important. Come into the present moment. So what actually helps? If intrusive thoughts are consuming you, the answer is not usually more analyzing, because again, intrusive thoughts feed on that engagement. You're feeding the problem. So the more you debate with them or analyze them or try to gain certainty, the stronger they often become. You know, I work with OCD a lot, and we talk about feeding the OCD monster. Like, you're giving it what it wants. You're making it more powerful, even though you feel like you're combating it, but you're not. So notice the thought, name it, allow discomfort, and return to the present moment. Right here, right now. Is this thing happening? No. If it happens, I'll handle it then. But right now, it's not happening. This is one reason that the evidence-based approaches like ERP, exposure and response prevention, can be so powerful for intrusive thoughts when dealing with OCD. Because healing often involves learning, we say to ourselves, I can experience uncertainty without treating every thought like an emergency. And spiritually, this can also return us to trust. Not blind trust, not bypassing, not spiritual bypassing. We're not ignoring or pretending or talking ourselves out of our feelings and our experiences. We're just becoming more present, acknowledging, accepting, and writing it out. Okay? And we're definitely not ignoring real danger. But reconnecting with your body outside of panic can be very difficult. And so I want to give you a few ideas here. So some practices that might help are grounding techniques, which can be literally going outside and connecting with the earth, laying on the floor. In yoga, you know, even just doing shavasana where you're just laying there, or doing some kind of mild restorative pose, grounding yourself into the earth, grounding yourself into the ground. Nervous system regulation, mindfulness, trauma therapy like EMDR or prolonged exposure, journaling, embodiment work like somatic work, spending time in nature, going for a hike, sitting by the water, reducing compulsive reassurance seeking, and learning to tolerate uncertainty. These are all very helpful techniques to bring you back into the moment and not really give in to that nervous energy that comes with the intrusive thoughts. So If you struggle with intrusive thoughts, please know this. You are not broken. You are not crazy. You're definitely not alone. And your thoughts are not moral verdicts of who you are. Sometimes the most loving, empathic, intuitive people experience the loudest intrusive thoughts because they care so deeply. But fear is not always wisdom. And healing often begins when we stop treating every frightening thought as prophecy. Your intuition does not need to terrorize you, to guide you. Real intuition tends to create awareness, not imprisonment. So again, these are things to watch out for when you're wondering, is this my intuition or is this my anxiety? And as you heal your nervous system, reconnect with your body, and rebuild trust with yourself, you may find that your true inner voice was never the panic at all. It was the quieter, more subtle voice underneath it all the whole time. So we got to get quiet and we got to listen. If this episode resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever struggled to tell the difference between anxiety and intuition? I want to know. I want to hear what it's like for you. And if you'd like more conversations about trauma, women's mental health, OCD, nervous system healing, spirituality, and of course the divine feminine, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to Gifts of Intuition, and also if you feel like there's anybody else who might positively benefit from watching this episode, I would love for you to share it with them as well. So again, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode, and really work on trusting your intuition. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.